seconds.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and today is Monday, April the 25th, 2022, which means you are here just in time for OTP's weekend review this week with Big Rig Craig Oberholzer. He's going to be joining us here in just a few moments, and we'll talk about everything that happened over the weekend. There was a lot of racing going on, so we're going to talk about a lot of different race series on this episode. Going to try to change it up a little bit, really dive into what all is going on. Last weekend wasn't really a whole lot going on at all. Not a whole lot of racing going on, not a lot of big stories going on. I apologize for going a little bit radio silent myself. As everyone knows, I went through a little bit of a life change here recently, so last week had a ton of stuff compiled, had to line some things up that I couldn't avoid that were in the beginning of the week. Anyway, long story short, I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to try to go off on that whole tangent once again. I apologize. Here we are. Here we go. OTP's weekend review with Stu. Well, this week with Craig Oberholzer. What's going on tonight, and then tomorrow we'll be joining you for OTP Tuesday as scheduled. First, before we get things going, want to give a big shout out to Beta Motorcycles. They are the official manufacturer of On the Pipe Podcast. Beta Motorcycles has been a family-owned and operated company since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro, trials, and dual sport motorcycles that are known for their premium quality and rideability. Beta Motorcycles are the best-looking bikes on the market and back it up with their superior performance. Head over to betausa.com for more information on their available models or to find a dealer near you to get yours today. So big shout out to Beta Motorcycles. I'm happy that I'm finally getting some seat time, putting some hours on my Beta 300RR. Loving that thing. Hopefully I can get it to a starting line here soon and do a little bit of racing. Leg is feeling decent, but I need to get in shape. I need to get back to riding and feel good about it before I go race. That's for sure. This episode is also brought to you in part by our good friend of the show, OTP alumni, Zach Tussle at Raymond James Financial. Zach is a racer and a financial advisor that helps his clients win when it comes to retirement and financial planning. If you or someone you know wants to save and invest for the future or is already retired and needs advice for income during retirement, Zach Tussle is always our first recommendation. Find out more by Googling Zach Tussle or on their website at financialadvisorsdenvernc.com. So get a hold of Zach and learn about your financials today and how they can help you at Raymond James, courtesy of our buddy Zach Tussle. With that being said, we're going to jump right into this week's episode. Going to start out by bringing things in with a good buddy of the show, alumni of the show, OTP OG, Craig Gubergazer. Craig, how's it going tonight?
Doing good, man. Just hanging out.
Where are you at right now?
I'm sitting in a abandoned car wash in Jackson, Ohio in my van.
Jackson, isn't that where old Rodney Tomlin's from?
Yeah, me and Rodney probably get him to go buy me a steak dinner, but I guess he's scared, so he's out 5 Points Road right now. I've been trying to hook up with him, but he's scared to go hang out. So, yeah, Rodney's a local boy. He's grown up about 3 miles away from the house.
Man, you better tell old Porterhouse that he needs to get you an old porterhouse.
He's scared. That's what it is. He's scared. And I know he's going to listen to this, and he needs to get a hold of me.
Rodney, if you're listening, Craig's been trying to hunt you down off 5 Points Road, all right?
Yeah, I haven't called or texted you, but I've been looking for you.
He didn't see your bat signal?
What's that?
He didn't see your bat signal up in the air or anything?
No, he turned his telepathy off is what it is, and he needs to be more responsible with it.
I don't feel as bad now. I haven't called or texted him, but I'm mad I haven't heard back from him. That sounds like something I'd say.
That's how it is.
Man, you're in Ohio almost as much as you're in North Carolina, and I don't know how you do it. That's a lot of driving.
Yeah, I don't have a really good answer. I don't have a response at all for what you just said. So I am up here a lot. Where I grew up, I like being up here. My buddy Jeff Miller's actually buying me. He's building me a 95 TR250 right now. So I came up actually trying to hopefully get it done. Went to Fast Tracks in Nelsonville, Ohio this weekend. Did some riding. Ended up borrowing a buddy's 250F to ride. And kind of just hanging out. We have a storage unit we're cleaning out, getting all my old junk motorcycles out of there, taking them back to Carolina. So just up here enjoying it while I'm up here.
So did you race at Fast Tracks this weekend?
Yeah, my buddy Morgan Abel had a 250F Honda sitting in the garage. Hasn't been started in over a year and a half. Started it straight to the line. Didn't clean a filter. My bad. Didn't change the oil until afterwards. But yeah, we went up there, rode the 11 o'clock session. One and done, got in, got out, and cool to be home and ride with the local boys.
Heck yeah. Speaking of local boys up there at Fast Tracks, that is one of the series, one of the races that's on our list for stuff that was going on over the weekend. So I guess I was going to ask you where you want to get started at. You led us straight into Fast Tracks. Big surprise of the weekend. Former team manager over at the Beta rig over there. Still some developing things in that end, but former team manager, no longer team manager from what I hear, Cody Barnes came out to race Fast Tracks, ended up taking the win out there over Blaston Moore, and then JoJo Cunningham in his second race back on the bike rounds out the podium. So what was the battles like? Were you racing during their race, or did you get to see that all go down?
Yeah, so I showed up planning on racing Open Pro, don't know why. Got to looking at who was there and just signed up for Open, so I was scared. I started the row behind everybody, and actually Tristan Landrum was there on a new Yamaha. I don't know what that situation is, but he went and picked up a Yamaha the day before. He actually gave me a air filter for that Honda for the second moto I was going to do that he had left over. But so Tristan Landrum, JoJo Cunningham, Tanner, what's Tanner's name?
Whipple?
404. Tanner, for A license stuff last couple of years.
Whipple?
Pretty last name. No, Tanner, blonde kid, 404. It's called Rocket Man. Is enclosed always said when I was younger. Anyway, so yeah, Tristan, JoJo, Blaston Moore, Corey Buttrick, Levi Kilbarger over Bonsai. There was a pretty stacked class. The top five. Chris Montgomery was up there. The top five guys were pretty stinking fast. The guys ripped. And that's another thing about Corey. He was actually a mechanic there at the last beta, and I assumed he was still there. And when I was on the line, I seen his jersey and seen he's on a KTM 252 stroke, and I was like, "Oh, hell yeah!" So
he was racing on
him because he hadn't actually been riding. He told me recently he hadn't really been riding much, and dude, he was fast as shit. He was a ripper. Did not leave. He hasn't been riding that much in the last year, obviously working, and he set the boys on fire. He was ripping.
On a two-stroke?
252 stroke.
Dang. Now,
yeah, that's why I texted him this morning and said XC2 Champ 2023 ?
What'd he say?
He did not reply. Cool guy to me, but I'm sure he will reply sometime soon.
Nah, I don't know if you've ever been to his house, but he does not have a lick of signal, so you're going to have to wait till the next time he goes into town for groceries.
But, dude, he was I kind of thought since that was JoJo's second ride or second race, he did really good too. I mean, he was right there with Tristan, which last couple of years him and Tristan did neck and neck every race. So I didn't see a whole lot of speed loss from him, but the boys were ripped. The top five was absolutely on fire. And if everybody listening doesn't know about Fast Tracks, Norm Bickley owns it. He runs it out of Nelsonville. They do local fair races too under Fast Tracks. And it's kind of like there's the GP format, 5 laps each race for the big bikes, and it ends up being about 45 minutes, so roughly 45-minute motos. 3 big bike races a day for GP and Supercross at night. So there's a couple different races that all those guys rode. So I think JoJo got second in a couple, Tristan got third in a couple. So there's quite a bit of racing going on over the weekend. A lot of the guys from states close come and join out, and they are a packed house. when I say you cannot find a place to park, they got a huge following. So anybody around Kentucky or West Virginia, North Carolina, obviously because I came all the way up there for it, but Southern Ohio, it's a sick place to be.
Man, I even saw they had a factory photographer out there, old Thaddy, out there with the camera. Did you get a chance to see or talk to him at all?
Yeah, I pulled up actually on a pit bike, just going watching the start, and I seen him. We were sitting there talking. Actually, sold him some Aflac insurance while I was up there talking crap to him. And yeah, I guess I didn't mention that Jacoby Duvall was actually second overall behind Corey in one of the sessions. So shout out to Jacoby.
Dang,
Ripping on the P-Dub.
I was about to say, he must be really ripping on the P-Dub.
Yeah, he's not scared. Yeah, so Tad was out there with the camera, and I think his boy rode a couple races and some Supercross that night. So it was cool seeing him at the races again.
Heck yeah. How'd you end up?
I did pretty decent since I haven't been riding as much. I think I got fourth in open and like 20th overall or so. Pro class probably had 10 or 12 in there, so I didn't feel too bad, just kind of cruising. I'm a little sick for a Honda 250. I'll be 100% honest with you. So I was milking her for what she was worth, but I didn't get hurt. Got to go home, so everything's good on my end. I had a lot of fun.
Wait, so did you come back to North Carolina since then, or have you've just been up there the whole time?
Yeah, I've been up here since Thursday.
Gotcha.
And I'm getting a flight Wednesday to go to Florida to pick up my grandma and then go back to North Carolina and then come back up here to empty out a storage unit. So next week and half of my life is pretty busy.
Sounds like it. And that was, for those that don't know Craig, which probably everyone knows you at this point, but that's not an out of the line question to ask, because I swear I'll hang out with you one day and next thing I know I see you in Ohio the next day. So
yeah, I would have an Ohio license. I don't know. I'm up here a lot, but it's a 5.5 hour drive. It's not too terrible.
I figured it'd be more than that.
No, pretty close to John Pitton.
My favorite place in the world.
That is my favorite GNCC. I know everybody else hates it. I like it.
It's probably my second to least favorite.
Yeah. What other races were going on over the weekend?
So there was a sprint enduro that went on in West Virginia. Lane Michael, the defending champion there, he grabs the overall win. Josh Toth ends up in second place on the weekend, and Craig DeLong rounds out the third place position in the Pro 1 class. Pro 2, Cody Barnes has been ripping, dude. He grabs the Pro 2 win once again. Fourth place overall, I want to say. I think I wrote down third, but I'm pretty sure it's fourth. And then Gus Reardon taking home second place in Pro 2, and then Thorne Devlin rounds out the Pro 2 podium. The women's, the WXC class, women's pro class, Corey Steed takes the win over Taylor Jones. Those two have been battling back and forth at the sprint enduros. So Corey gets the best of Taylor this weekend, and then Shelby Turner rounds out the women's pro class podium. And then the Pro-Am class was won by Jason Tino, Neil Enman in second place, and Dylan De La Cruz rounds out the Pro-Am podium. And then Cole Forbes smoked all the amateurs. Cole Forbes was the top amateur up there. He's been ripping.
Yeah, that kid definitely for sprints looks good. I think he's had a couple good finishes in the GCCs too, so good for him coming straight from super minis or big bike straight to 3 hour. That's awesome.
Yep. And then another dude that's been ripping, Lane Michael. His sprint speed is unreal.
Yeah, his cross test speed is super unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think now he's probably just now getting super comfortable back on the bike. Obviously, I think he crashed at Big Buck number 1 also, I believe.
Yep.
He just kind of had an AC joint issue. But I'd say by now he's definitely 100% back racing again. Obviously he's racing anyway, but back 100% feeling on the bike, so that's awesome. Staying healthy. Yeah,
and Lane is one guy. He's battled a ton of injuries over the past few years, really. And, yeah, like you said, more shoulder injuries this year. But I know that kind of hasn't been the way that he wanted his GNCC season to go, but he's still staying right in that Sprint Enduro Championship race. Josh Toth is looking really good. He's really tough to beat right now. I think Toth is definitely going to be a big one to watch this weekend leading into the National Enduro. Have you got a chance to talk to him about his weekend, this past weekend, grabbing second?
Yeah, well, actually back up to him heading to the races. Me and him, between all of our vehicles, we only have one vehicle that runs right or stops, and he had 0 vehicles. So we had to put brake lines on his old C10. That's why you guys see him in his 65 Chevrolet driving to the races, because his van was down, his dad's truck was down, everything he owned was down, so we had to put brake lines on the C10. Yeah, cruised it up, 6-hour trip up there, and he said he likes that West Virginia dirt. So I didn't talk to him much after the race. I just sent him a congratulations text on the second place, made a little bit of money, had some fun, and he said all was well. He said just got to work on the cross test a little bit. I believe he said that in a post also, but he just said back to work, said had a good time, everything was good.
Man, so I wanted to talk about the truck, and it's funny that you say that because turns out it was out of necessity. Style points. So first of all, we talked about, me and Stu have talked about it. I think you and I have talked about it. Basically, anybody that'll listen to me talk, I tell them that if there was a style award, my vote is Josh Toth. And now he takes that off the track, showing up. Did you say 65 or 66?
65 C10, I believe.
Yeah, so 65 Chevy showing up. So the last time I went to Toth's house, his damn sparkly factory Red Bull FMF KTM is leaning against this patinaed yellow old rusty looking 65 truck, and like I took a picture of it when I was there. It's like that just looks sick. Then to see that same factory bike in the back of that truck driving 6 hours away to a race in West Virginia where, oh by the way, he got second place on the day, that style points go off the track too. That thing looked nasty.
Yeah, it's sick. He actually said he had plans to get a full restart eventually, maybe do like a new 6.2 Chevrolet motor or something like that in it. But for right now, who cares? Throwing the bike up on the side of it, he's going to get painted eventually anyway. That truck actually runs awesome. And that was kind of his plan when he sold his last truck. Just cruise around the C10, cruise the North Carolina mountains at a wheel cylinder go in it, and locked up the brakes. We had to cut the brake line and kink it so we could drive it home. It's just been sitting for months. So threw it together to go racing. Everything worked out at the end, and that Red Bull KTM does look sick in the back of that old Chevrolet.
Yeah, dude, that was a pretty cool picture to see when I saw that he drove that thing all the way up there at like 6 miles a gallon.
Yeah, that's what he kept saying. FJB said can't afford to drive it. He said he better win this weekend so he can afford to go home. Go Brand.
Man, so a couple things that surprised me over the weekend there. Craig DeLong, we don't really see him race sprint enduros too much. He goes out there, ends up on the Pro 1 podium. I thought that was pretty cool. He was out there ripping. And then also, like I said, Cody Barnes has just been on fire at those sprint enduros. And then same thing with Thorne. Thorne's been ripping. And then Gus. Gus goes out, gets second place there. At the last GNCC, Gus led the overall first lap. He was the fastest overall rider on lap 1. So it's cool to see the success of all these different riders going out to different disciplines, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was just thinking about Gus earlier. I think he's 17. So once Gus just gets a little more experience in this style racing, because obviously them coming from Australia, going to California and doing works and NGPC, sprint style racing is all those Aussies forte. They love that. So coming out the first lap, showing the speed to everybody is gnarly. And getting adjusted to the soil over here, getting adjusted to everything, I think in the next year he's going to win a Pro 2 championship for sure in the future in the sprint, because the boy's rowdy. Seeing him at AUS over North Carolina, just those boys are crazy. Him, Mason, and Linden. And that's something I thought about also. Really wish Mason and Linden were still following that sprint series and seeing if they could run up their boys. So I know they can run, top 5 overall time for sure. And Cody Barnes, he's unstoppable right now. I mean, I don't think he hasn't lost one yet, has he?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, and I mean, he's battled for overall podiums and overall wins. And you almost wonder if he wasn't on a 250F, maybe if he was on one of those 300 red lines, or he's on a 450 Honda. You know, could he do much better? Could he do worse? But I just think kind of like how Johnny last year was on 250S battling for overall wins, and this year for injury, you know, on the 350 he was, I mean, running away, ripping. Maybe Cody would have the same look next year, maybe on a bigger bike for overall wins.
Yeah, and that is one thing that, especially in the cross test, where having that extra power would definitely benefit as far as getting into the overall times. But I did want to say Cody has not won all of the races. At the beginning of the season, Johnny Gerard was there, Lyndon Snodgrass was there. So I think those two snuck off some wins in there before Johnny got injured. I'm pretty sure Lyndon won one this year, but yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because Lyndon is a guy who had the fastest overall time at a test at the ISDE. So when you talk about sprint speed, he's literally led the world in a test. And yeah, I don't know why they decided to go away from that sprint series, and maybe we'll see him at other sprint races or just other races in general. But yeah, it's cool. Going into the season, one thing that we kind of talked about is the guys that are going to be the mainstays, the Johnny Gerards, the Lyndon Snodgrasses, the Mike Wachowskis, and you know that these guys are going to be competing for championships. But back to your point about Gus, he was the one that I kind of said, well, watch out, because he came from Australia. Like you said, they've been racing on the West Coast, and there's not a lot of West and East Coast intermingling in the United States. And so when Gus comes over, a lot of people don't know who he is. So I think he was one of the guys like, hey, keep him on your radar. As you mentioned, he's only 17 years old. And, yeah, the speed he's been putting down so far has been pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool to see a guy come from out west and come over east and do so good. Like, obviously, I'm not, you know, a professional rider, but I went over there and got my ass spanked. I got absolutely smoked. And those guys, like the NGPCs and the works races, which I don't think I raced works. No, I think I pro NGPC. Yeah, those guys are another level of kind of crazy. I mean, they were blue grooves, straight stretches, 100 mile an hour. I mean, that's what those guys are all about. So it is cool seeing him coming over here to the East Coast and adjusting so quickly. And I just think, you know, he's that fast at 17. How fast is he going to be at 23? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, Mason Simmons is another one that should be right up there at the front with all of them, but he kind of got hurt right before the season started and been dealing with that injury a little bit leading into it. So I feel like he's another name that will be on the scene, but it's been a tough start to his campaign out here on that Trail Jesters team just because of that injury. I think he's got a way higher ceiling than what people have seen so far as well.
Yeah, Stu was actually talking. I don't know if it was in a video or was it on or a weekend review with Stu. It was on, I think, one of your first ones.
Yeah, I think it was on a podcast I listened to.
Yeah, him and Strang and Lyndon, and I think Angus and them were still in California at the time. They went down to the shoals a little bit training over the winter, and he's like, dude, Mason Simmons is another level. Like, and he was on the motocross track. He's comfy, you know. This was a couple weeks before injury. He's like, this kid right here is fast. And he is, you know, getting back off injury, you know, getting back. He's not exactly up to race pace yet. All the weeks he hasn't been racing. So I think in the next 2 rounds, I mean, he's gonna explode. He's gonna be ripping.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Especially after seeing them practice and everything, and how he's been riding, and it's when you're dealing with a lingering injury like that, and not just him, but I mean, we just talked about Lane Michael. Toth has ridden through a lot of injuries. A lot of these top guys have ridden through injuries. And when you put that in a 3-hour-long GNCC, when you're trying to race at the highest level imaginable, I mean, those injuries add up, and it's tough to really get to that full race pace and full potential until those things are kind of behind you. And I think Mason is rounding that corner as far as putting all that behind him and showing what his real potential is.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the reason they're not running the sprints right now. It's because everyone's main focus right now is GNCC. So everyone's just trying to stay injury free, and if that means, you know, just focusing on one series to make sure you get through it. So I think he did get injured in one of the first sprints of the year, I believe, when they were down in I think the second actual U.S. sprint of the year is when he got injured on the second day. So he's focusing more on GNCC, I guess, and that's his main focus anyway. So I understand what he's doing.
Yeah, and another guy, the ringleader, if you will, the Aussie with the experience, Josh Strang, kind of mentoring those guys, and they all ride together and train together. Strang, obviously, round 2 broke his arm. He is now back on the bike and looking to return, hopefully next weekend at the Hoosier GNCC. But I got a chance to go down there and film some stuff with Strang and just see all them boys riding and talk with them and catch up. So I'm excited to see them all back after it.
Yeah, and I believe you've been to AUS a couple times too, and I live pretty close to it, so I've been over there. It's definitely not all fun and games. The guys are getting their motos in and everything. It's old JGR test track they're riding at. It's so sick. So the guys are over there putting their motos in every day. And Strang, I imagine, probably by John Penton, he'll be a top 3 guy again because he always runs good up north. So, yeah, it's cool to see all our buddies getting healthy again. About sick of making Aflac claims. Our friends getting hurt.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things, too, and granted, I haven't been around a lot of the pro riders like during the week and see how they all train, and a little bit partial just because I've seen them guys train and just knowing them in general. But I think that's another thing too why we can expect to see Josh right back on top and then keep seeing the progression of the younger guys over there training. I mean, Lyndon's got the white plate now, the points leader in XC2. Those guys, it's not just on the bike. They definitely put their motos in and do all that, but they also do all the stuff off the bike too. So I know all of these pro riders obviously doing it for a living. Everyone trains hard, and a lot of the training is done behind closed doors, and that's all the way across the board. But just getting a little bit of a peek inside to what their training looks like and what they're doing off the bike as well as on the bike, and now they got that whole compound with a bunch of different ways to do it. It's pretty impressive, and just like you said, I don't think it'll take very long for Strang to be back up on the podium once he gets back.
Yeah, the Aussie boys like Tyler Palmer, those guys live on a road bike. I mean, those guys, I don't know how many miles they put in a week, but and like what you said, behind closed doors, we only see like they're not posting videos every single day of them training, but they're literally every day. If they're not in the gym working or riding, they're cruising on a road bike, putting in the laps. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see. I do not have that work ethic, and that's exactly what it takes to be that fast and do it for a living. And it is a job for sure.
See, it's hard for me to motivate myself to have that work ethic. Growing up, like wrestling and the kind of things I accomplished through that, and then getting into the whole MMA thing and having that team around you and having those people hold you accountable. And if you don't, there is no not showing up to practice because they're going to be at your door trying to figure out where you're at and just going in there and grinding. Like that's what my whole life consisted of. But I've noticed that, and it's something I've been trying to battle with now, especially with things changing on my end, is the accountability and, like you said, getting that work ethic. And I don't want to be biased or take anything away from anybody else because obviously, like, Ben is training, Bollinger's training, Ashburn's training. Like, Ashburn's one guy that's radio silent. We don't know what he does, but he comes out and gets on the podium every weekend. And so there's a lot of training that's done behind closed doors, and that's kind of something that I would be interested in seeing more about, see what these guys are doing. I mean, you got guys like Jacob Fetty, who's training riders, Charlie Mullins helping training riders, Steve Hatch training riders, and there's not really a whole lot of public knowledge about those programs, but you can see the results of these riders who are putting in the work week in and week out because it's the same guys that are up on the podium and battling for those spots.
Yeah, and there's definitely, I mean, if you look in the results, like GNCC, let's say, the guys that are factory guys that are doing it for a living, there's a very distinct separation in lap times. Because those guys, I mean, are definitely working their asses off. And there's some guys, the guys that get in top 20 overall that still have jobs, or the guys that are getting top 20 overall, like the younger kids that are doing it, that is what blows me away. Like, I know a couple years ago, I don't know if I think you were definitely around, but I mean, 2016, Levi Keller is a local guy in Ohio. And he goes to IXCRs, he goes to Select Lexers, OXCR, local races in Ohio and West Virginia and Indiana and stuff. And he was getting like top 17, top 15 overall. And he was roofing 60 hours a week. Dude is gnarly.
Yeah.
And, like, training whenever he could and riding whenever he could. But that was something I've seen that was very surprising. Someone like that didn't get a ride. I think he had a little bit of support from KRW in Dayton, Ohio. But that's dangerous. I mean, guys that can just get off the couch or, work all week long and show up and can still get, like, top 20s, that blows my mind.
Yeah, another guy that comes to my mind, and, I saw Levi Keller doing that too, but as soon as you said another guy that came to mind, Jesse Grom, or Grom, however you say it. He was another guy.
Oh, yeah.
He would be like in boilers. It's like 120 degrees. He's welding all night till 4 a.m. and then getting in a van, driving to the race and like competing well in the XC2 class.
Yeah. I'll tell you someone else while we're on the topic real quick. Connor Smith. And a lot of people out there know who Connor Smith is. He quit racing in 2018. Connor Smith, in 1 year, put 70 hours on his bike. Now that sounds, like why would you ask Craig? Why would you even say that? What's the matter? He raced sprints, he raced GNCCs, and some Mid East all in 1 year. We calculated it up. He put 4 hours of training on that bike all year long, and he was top 3 in Open A every single race. And I cannot. What a waste. I hate him so much. We're real good friends, but man, I hate him. Dude,
Yeah.
the most naturally talented kid probably I've ever seen on a motorcycle.
And now he's in Alaska.
Yeah, now he's out there killing meat. Is that how you say plural moose? Meat?
I don't think that's how that works. I don't
That's
know.
awesome. Someone pull a dictionary.
Mooses? Meese.
Mooses. Me.
Or maybe it's just moose with nothing.
But yeah, some guys just have it. I mean, I would have to work my absolute ass off to be top 70 overall. And,
Yeah.
I think I've got like 2 top 100 overalls in my life, and I was like, wow, look at me. I'm gonna quit my job tomorrow. But yeah, it is super sick to see the guys who can do it, and most guys can't. I can't do it. So props to them.
Yeah, and that's kind of some of the more amateur stuff that I want to uncover is all these dudes that, and I'm sure there's some girls doing it too, but like working blue collar jobs or working any kind of job throughout the week and then showing up and competing. Because to be realistic, man, there is only a handful of people that are making a living doing nothing but racing their dirt bikes. And then it also makes you wonder if those other people like we're talking about got an opportunity to do nothing but ride and race and train and have a practice bike and have setups on your race bike and your practice bike and not have to worry about putting the hours on it and having the free time and being able to train off the bike. It makes you wonder how many of these people could have made it to the next level, but the lack of training or lack of time kind of played into their whole deal. If that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good transition. Robbie Marshall, New England boy.
Yep.
Obviously has had a lot of success in outdoor motocross, and I think he's pretty much a legend up in New England. I think he ended up 4th. I think that's what we were talking about earlier. 4th in the Jday. And I think he runs his own business. I mean, he's working, I'm sure, 50, 60 plus hours a week. And he ended up 4th at the Jday this weekend.
Yeah. And so not only that, the very first race that I ever did in my entire life, let me get this right. It was a motocross race. I raced a motocross race and I raced Big Buck within the couple weeks, but I'm pretty sure the motocross race was first. Anyway, that's not the point. At Pro Sport MX in Wytheville, Virginia, I think is where it's at. My first ever race, I went there with TJ Snow, and Robbie Marshall and Jimmy Dakotas were there. So I learned about Robbie Marshall that day. And this was like within a couple months of me riding a dirt bike for the first time in my life. So he's been a guy that I've kind of followed. And like you said, he owns a grading business. He's a former multi-time Jday overall champion. And that's just showing up and racing on the weekends. He went to Southwick at a pro motocross on a KTM 252 stroke with a 300 head. And I think he set it was either the fastest time in qualifying or it was the 4th fastest time in qualifying. Nevertheless, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, the guys that say 2 strokes count when 4 strokes, they can get fucked. Dude, ripping on a 300. That is the coolest sound in the world. We even talked about Corey Buttrick earlier.
Yeah.
I guess I've seen him another session riding the 250XT, or I guess it was an SX, whatever it was, 252 for KTM new one. And there's nothing that beats the sound of it. So, yeah, that's awesome.
And you mentioned that, so diving into the Jday results, and I'm trying to remember if Robbie either got 4th or 5th. He got 5th overall. Simon Johnson was 4th overall. Robbie Marshall goes 3-6 for 5th overall. But it just goes to show you, it kind of like we were just talking about, had this not been a random weekend where Supercross was in New England and they kind of got invaded by some GNCC riders, Robbie Marshall would be battling for that win, because your Jday overall results, Ben Kelly goes up there. He is a product of Jday, raced some Jdays back in the day. He's from that New England Northeast area. He grabs the overall win. Bubs Tasha, who they have him listed on Husqvarna on the results, Bubs Tasha gets 2nd place, and then Ricky Russell gets 3rd. So Ricky Russell is a guy that we're talking about coming off of injury. He just got his first GNCC back at the last one at Camp Coker, and now he's going up racing Jday. So those were your top 3 riders overall for the Jday opener at Southwick. Is Ben Kelly, Bubs Tasha, Ricky Russell. But we talk about Robbie Marshall right there in 5th, Simon Johnson in 4th. Like, those would have been the guys battling for the win had it not been for Ben Kelly, who appears to be unstoppable at this point this year, and Bubs and Ricky going up there and getting in the mix as well. So,
yeah, and I guess Simon would have been at the GNCC also if there was one. So Robbie would have been up there. But you mentioned that Bubs was on a Husqvarna. He was on a Husqvarna, looks like a TC 252 stroke. And I've seen on the Jday Instagram, there's a 3 logs. He like wheel tapped through them. It was pretty sick. So it looked like he was riding good. Looked like they were all pretty close in time.
Wait, he wasn't on a Husky?
I've always wanted to do was go up there and race one of those. What were you going to say?
He wasn't on a Husky?
Yeah, he was.
No, he was on a KTM.
No, he was on a Husqvarna that said Teal Energy on the side of it.
I wonder why that is. I'm looking at the video right now. It looks like a KTM.
No, the first fight to come through, I think it was DK, and then he comes through and like wheel hops through the 3 logs. He posted an Instagram story the other day too of the 252 stroke with Keeley graphics.
Oh, I hope we're not getting him in trouble, because I'm pretty sure.
Well, he put it on his Instagram, so he can't be in too much trouble.
No. Well, I know he normally rides a Teal Energy Racing KTM, so I'm not going to speculate on what he was riding at the Jday. I just saw that in the results page. But nevertheless, I saw him and Ricky going back and forth a little bit about Bubs getting the best of Ricky at Jday. What do you think about that?
I think it kind of goes back to whenever Bubs started coming to the GNCCs. You see, like, kind of like the hype videos they had of him when he came and started racing with Brody Johnson 250A a couple years ago. He was, like, bar to bar with BK, like in 2019. And nobody knew who he was down here. Obviously, everyone up north knew who he was. But
at the Jdays you're talking about? Yeah,
at the Jdays, yeah. And, I mean, the boy can ride, that's for sure. He's another guy that's been plagued with some injuries. He's had some issues in the last couple of years, and luckily this year, I think he's been good so far. He had issues at Florida, but other than that, he's been healthy. So hopefully see him back up to speed. No one ever will see anybody get hurt. I mean, that's the worst thing about what we do is everyone gets hurt a couple times, and it definitely happens. So he's back healthy, and I mean, kind of shows how fast he is, you know.
Yep, 100%. And real quick, looking at the women's pro class for Jday, Jocelyn Barnes, she goes out there and takes the win in the women's pro class. And then Ruby Festini in 2nd and Savannah Kipp in 3rd. And you talk about Jday, you talk about these New England riders, you see guys like Josh Toth come down, win an XC2 race, win an XC2 championship. Then Ben Kelly comes down, wins an XC2 race, wins 2 XC2 championships, and now wins an XC1 championship and pretty well on his way to a 2nd. I think there's a lot of riders that race that Jday series that a lot of people are unfamiliar with as far as from down here is concerned, but that are absolute rippers. And if they, I mean, traveling if you live up in that area, if you live in the Northeast, it is basically close to impossible to run the GNCC series. I think that if you live up in that area, your closest race is like 12 hours away. So there's a lot of them that don't come down and get that national spotlight and get that national attention. But I think that's a series that's jam packed with high level riders.
Yeah, so actually, I think we talked about this before. Last summer, I went to Southwood with Josh and went up there and stayed a week just to do some traveling. Lucky enough to borrow a bike off somebody and go ride local spots where BK usually rides on Wednesdays, I guess. Brian Dussault's house. He's a sport guy from up north, rides some XC races. But there was about like 12 of us. Bunch of 250A guys from Jday, a couple B guys, but mostly 250A and pro guys. And we were riding a big fan loop. And those guys, I mean, kind of remind me of just real fast moto guys. I mean, they'd have style for days. And the guys, what I heard was from Zach Toast, Josh's brother, is they're snowed in for 6 months. So when everything's thawed out, they got to go crazy and get it out of their system while they can. It's not like it is down south where it could be December and 60 degrees. You can be ripping down the road. But up there, you know, you got a short window to go and have a little bit of fun before you have to bust out the skis and snowmobiles. So yeah. A lot of those guys up there, I don't know, I think they have a lot more motocross tracks, and it shows a lot of fast guys up there.
Yep, and it'll be cool to see how many more make the transition from like a Jday series down to the GNCCs. I mean, Bubs, we were just talking about him, he's another guy that came down and has been having success at GNCCs. So I don't know, be a cool thing to look out for.
It's sick.
Going back out to the West Coast, NGPC is a series we talked about a little bit ago. Gus used to race them. I think that's where it came up at. But taking the pro class win was Dante Oliveira. Second place was Alston Walton. And third place was Cole Martinez. In the Pro 2 class at the NGPC, it was Matteo. Is it Matteo? Matteo Oliveira. Yeah. Jack Simpson gets second place. And Colton Eck rounds out the Pro 2 podium. WXC class, Brandy Richards grabs the win. For the women's pro riders, Ava Silvestri grabs second place, and Tara Geiger rounds out the women's pro podium. And Collier Martinez gets the top amateur spot. Now, Dante Oliveira, Mateo Oliveira, Alston Walton, all those guys, ISDE riders, all those guys, very fast guys out on the West Coast. Did you get a chance to go to an NGPC, which is National Grand Prix Championship, I think? Did you get a chance to go to those or meet any of those fellas in your journeys out west?
Yeah, so I raced two of them, and I was there whenever Dante was crowned, and I was at Prim, Nevada, and Blythe. So two different ones I went to. I went there a couple different times, but I raced twice and was there watching. Dante and Mateo, super sick. Guys are super down to earth. I mean, like I say about these off-road riders in the East Coast, everyone's super laid back. Like there's no cool guys. Nobody usually, gives you a cold shoulder. Those guys, same way. I was truck driving for KTM obviously at the time. Everyone came up to me, shook my hand, said, "Hey, what's up?" Introduced themselves. Super good bunch over there. I didn't meet Cole Martinez. I met most of the KTM guys, Austin Walton, I met him. Most of the Austrian brand riders, everyone was cool. Yeah, everyone's very, very fast. Mateo Oliveira is a ripper. Almost say just as fast as Dante, even on that 250F when they're riding sand, a couple places, he's gnarly.
Yeah, and the West Coast thing, that is something that I know absolutely nothing about, just because I've never been out there at all. So I don't know how those races work. I don't know where they're at. I don't know who are the top guys. I mean, I recognize a lot of names, especially like the ISDE guys, but the West Coast side of things is something I definitely want to get into, especially now having more time to kind of study into it and look into it out there. I'm excited about it because that, like I said, it's weird that, I don't know if it's weird is the right word, but there really is no intermingling between the West Coast and East Coast. We talked about it a little bit earlier in this podcast, but you don't often see, especially the top guys or any of the guys for that matter, coming across. I mean, Thad went out and won a couple works races. Caleb was going to run. It was the Big Six at the time, but it is the NGPC series. I think Big Six turned into NGPC. Caleb was running a year out there for his second series and then ended up not finishing the year out. Other than that, I mean, I've seen Taylor Robert came over and raced snowshoe one time. Other than that, you really don't see a whole lot of intermingling between the West Coast and the East Coast guys. So that's really something I want to learn more about, is these West Coast riders and how fast they are and how the series and everything out there work, because it is all a little bit different.
Yeah, I think I think Mateo and Dante both came over. But Dante came and led some laps and had some issues mid-race. I believe at Pennsylvania one year. I think that's where it was at.
Recently?
But, and, maybe they'd like to come over and, dedicate themselves to one of the series. But, I mean, kind of how it works is, I mean, if they came over, then they ain't got to have the KTM riders out west. But they stay out west and do their thing, and everyone here stays out. But, like Lake Havasu a couple years ago, we had, there's 6 East Coast guys showed up. And they were all in the mix. I mean, even Thad, I think Thad, was a Thad, Caleb, Josh, Ricky, maybe Ben. Lake Havasu race, and I mean, they were all right there in the top 7. And at those races, the top 7 is very, very close, and they're gnarly, dude. Like 2 dozers wide, sand whoops in some spots, big old gnarly jumps. It's a whole different style of racing. I feel like it fits a motocross guy's style and riding better. It was not my style at all. I mean, it was those guys had way bigger balls than I did. Going so fast on Blue Group stuff. And I was riding a shop bike that was definitely not set up for me, but it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, those guys, it's a whole different style of racing. But I think East Coast guys would most of the time outrun West Coast guys until they got used to it over here. And then East Coast guys could run with West Coast guys over there. It would take a while, but I think everyone's about the same speed. Everyone's got, same endurance. Just get used to the different terrains because everything's so much different.
Yeah, and out here, I mean, if you're running an average mile per hour of in the 20s to 30s, then it's like a fast track. I remember when Caleb went out there, he posted his GPS times and stuff. His average speed was 86 miles an hour.
Yeah, kind of like a Nashville Hare and Hound too. My buddy Brandon Krause races those, and kind of watching some of his GoPro videos. It's you'll take off, and I don't know how many guys are on the line. I think there's it's 2 sportsman A's together at Ironman. It's huge. It's huge line. And everybody's just bombing a straight line through, it kind of looks like the Florida trees. What are those things called? Little shrubs?
Yeah, the palmetto roots.
Yeah, hate them. And it's just gnarly because I can't do that. I don't want to do that.
Holding those bikes wide open with 100 people next to you.
Yeah. That they feel comfortable at 80 plus. I don't even like going 80 plus on a freaking street bike, dude. I don't want to do it. I'm not good at going that fast. So, yeah, those guys are super gnarly.
Yeah, I don't like going 80 mile an hour on the street either because deer run in front of you. Oh, speaking of which, Toth got sideswiped pretty much by a deer this weekend at the Sprint Enduro, and then had a little bit of a tip over. Was that caused by the deer?
I don't know, but if he doesn't quit cussing, I mean, he ain't going to win no more races. You see that? He cusses in the GoPro, then he loses the weekend. So, I don't know, man. He needs to figure it out.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
Potty mouth.
Yeah, it's funny. Be a little more Christian about it. No, yeah. He looked over and seen a deer and it threw him off. Then, 2 corners later, he stood up. He's like, dang it. And there's been a lot of stuff like that happen. I've hit a deer in my woods in Ohio. Strang ripped the front end off a bike at Snowshoe one year. I mean, it's kind of gnarly. I mean, you're in the woods, there's animals out there, but not very often, especially around a racetrack that has live bikes still on them all day. You see deer running up the trail.
Dude, one of my craziest experiences at a race, I believe it was Strange's Ranch, I think is what they call it. It was either that or Chestnut Corner. Anyway, it was a Mid-East race in South Carolina, and you go through this field section. It kind of has some rollers in it that you jump when you're going through it. But, I mean, it's a It's a really fast section. And then you go straight into the woods, which is like heavy cover. So then it goes from bright out in the field to dark in the woods, and it kind of always takes a second for your eyes to adjust. Dude, I came into the woods and there was a mini horse, like a pony, in the middle of the trail, and I almost hit that thing. Like, it stopped and just looked at me, and I had to slam on the brakes and swerve out of the way. That is the only time I've ever seen a mini horse in the middle of a trail. They're a little bit thicker, too, than a deer.
That is gnarly.
Yeah. So, deer, mini horses. There was a bear at a full gas one time.
Dude, I've never seen a bear. Oh, yeah. I've never seen a bear. Always wanted to see one.
I think it was at the golf course where Full Gas is going next. I'm pretty sure it was up there.
That's sick.
So.
Yeah. What other races were going on this weekend? There's some locals too, North Carolina.
Yeah. So, real quick, there was IXCR, Mike Wachowski. He went up there, kind of a IXCR product himself. He goes back to his roots. He grabs the win there. Tommy Fortune in second. Matt Sims in third. Van Adams was your top amateur at IXCR. VXCS, Nathan Thornhill took some time from selling some Fords and went out and won the overall at the VXCS. And then Patrick Tucker gets second place and Hunter Thorne in third. And as you mentioned, there was a North Carolina race that went down. A little bit of a star-studded cast out at the North Carolina race. Trevor Bollinger ends up taking the overall win just ahead of Brody Johnson. Evan Earl, who's your North Carolina points leader, he grabs third place on the day. And Jordan Oots, or I think, was the top amateur. So quite the cast out at the North Carolina race.
Yeah, that actually sucks. That's actually the series I wanted to race this year, but sold my bike off, and now I'm floating around in other states. But the North Carolina series is super sick. That's my favorite local series. And hey, Trevor Barrett, big OTT alumni guy, he was in fourth overall. Him and Bolton were battling. He was right outside that top three of some fast company. And he ended up, I think he actually ate shit third lap. Scotty called me all fired up about it. But yeah, all the local boys are doing good this weekend and everything. I think everyone stayed healthy. I guess that's 90% of what matters. But, dude, there's some fast guys. Like, whenever I was younger, you didn't really ever hear of, like, Charlie Mullins or these guys showing up to locals and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's so cool seeing, like, Trevor or, even Brody Johnson, those guys running XC2. Like, those guys show up to locals. It's so sick.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we're covering so many different series is because of that. I mean, you got all the GNCC points leaders showing up at Jday. You got like Corey Buttrick and JoJo and Blason at Fast Tracks. You got Mike Wachowski at IXCR. You got Bollinger and Brody and all those guys at North Carolina. It was like there was a lot of top pros that were racing locals that you don't normally see at a local race. And like you mentioned, that was pretty cool. I did see Trevor Barrett, as you were saying, like 7th or 8th place overall. I hadn't talked to him yet, so I didn't know what had happened. You said he fell like on the third lap or towards the end of the race?
Yes, the third lap, Scotty said he came through fourth. And I don't really remember what he said. I guess he rung his bell pretty good, had some bike issues, and then battled back to 7th. So I think like Dustin Simpson was in the mix there, Golden Barral, some local guys we know. But yeah, he had some issues, but he was keeping up with the pace of the boys. I think he would have been right behind Evan, I guess. I think Evan ended up third.
Yep. And then Mike DeLosa ended up 4th, and then Dustin Simpson was 5th place. So
yeah, in that North Carolina series, I feel like when I first moved to Carolina, because I'm kind of a transplant, I've only been there since 2015. I feel like it didn't have as many pros at first. Mid-East kind of did, because Mid-East doesn't run. They have like kind of most of the guys that work at Mid-East obviously work at GNCC, so that's why that works out the way it does. But here lately, North Carolina's been getting some fast guys, and that's what I like. When I first moved there, it was like Jason Thomas and just Dustin Simpson. He was the wildest thing I ever seen in my life. When I first moved to the Carolinas, the first time ever meeting him, I show up and his back fender was snapped. He showed up and was parked beside my buddy Garrett Duncan, and they called him Destruction. They call him Destruction. I haven't heard him call him that in a long time. They call him Destruction D. And he was doing 12 o'clock wheelies in the pits and broke his back fender off before the race. And he started the race with no back fender. So there's definitely some characters, and he's super fast too. I mean, I think he's had some injuries over the year and comes out, and he's still a top 5 guy. I mean, I've seen him slide a wheel in last lap on Evan Earl a couple times and win some races. So there's a lot of fast talent around North Carolina showing some locals.
Yeah, Dustin's been on the podium in a few North Carolina races this year, and he would have had an overall win. He passed Evan Earl with 2 turns left and then completely blew out the last turn and let Evan back by him for the win. But
I was there for that. I actually wrecked, and I was riding Tyler Bruton's 450 at Denver. I think that's what you're talking about, right? Denver?
Yeah, I think so.
I crashed, and I was sitting there, I had no clutch on Tyler's bike. I was just sitting there sitting there hanging out waiting to get lapped. And he comes in and just clotheslines himself on a tree. They came in bar to bar, like the tightest of woods. It was wild.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cool. That's a very competitive series now too, because as you mentioned, a lot of the same people that are working Mid-East are working at the GNCCs. I mean, Ricky Towery, the Towery family. There's a lot of folks that go to the GNCCs that go to Mid-East. So Mid-East every single year, I mean, they got to have one of the easiest schedules that there is. They wait for GNCCs to come out, and they go, all right, we'll go on the other weekends. And North Carolina has traditionally, in the past, scheduled just all over the place. Over GNCCs, over Mid-East, over everything. And this year, they kind of put it all over GNCCs. And so it kind of stinks at the first few because all the local GNCCs is stuff that a lot of the local guys like to go run. They like to go run Camp Coker. They like to go run Big Buck. They like to go run Georgia. So this year, obviously, the first half of the GNCC season, if you're going to race in North Carolina for points, you kind of got to miss out on those fun GNCCs that are locals. But now that we're going above the Mason-Dixon line for pretty much every single round from here on out, the guys that don't travel the GNCC series and spend all the time on the highway chasing those later rounds in the north, now they don't have anything to conflict with as far as the local series. They can run North Carolina and they can run Mid-East because North Carolina is on GNCC weekends and Mid-East is on off GNCC weekends. So I think that has kind of convinced a few more people to race North Carolina, and I think that we're going to see that pro class and all the classes throughout the amateur ranks, for that matter, get more competitive as well now that the schedules free up a little bit more between, like, for instance, our local races, the Mid-East Hare Scrambles and North Carolina.
Yeah, that's awesome for guys like me. Like, last couple of years, I've been racing GNCCs as much as I could. But, like, now, I run the first couple of GNCCs and hang out with friends and kind of a floater. I like doing different things. Come up to Ohio for fast track, maybe a local moto race this year, a Mid-East whenever, a North Carolina whenever, and it's good to have a lot of variety down here for sure. So, big fan of the North Carolina series. I like Mid-East also. Just I like racing local, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Craig, you know this, but my plan with the beta this year was to take that thing to as many different race series as possible, as many different local series as possible, to bring it to North Carolina, a VXCS, a Fast Tracks, IXCR. That was my goal, was to race as many different series as I could in one year. Obviously, snap a leg in half, and it kind of throws a wrench in that. But we're getting to that point now that when these off GNCC weekends, man, we need to go check out some local races. I'm in.
Yeah, it's funny you say VXCS. I've been to a couple of those myself. Big fan. Just coming from the thick woods of Ohio, going down there, it was kind of a better adjustment for me than going to like Lake Sugar Tree a couple years ago. I think that's my River Road. So you never in one of the
It looks like we're running into some issues. Craig must have left his parking garage. I think we were on FaceTime audio, so now it's cutting out. But I'm sure Craig will be back with us here in a minute. But, yeah, that VXCS, I think well, there's a guy named Josh Deal is the one who took it over, and I believe this is his second year running it. But same thing, like I've heard nothing but good things about it. I've heard the tracks are good, the environments are good, and I can't wait to be able to go check one out myself. You back with us yet, Craig? Looks like we might have lost him for good. But yeah, so a lot of racing going on throughout, and this is just a very small section. I'm sure there's races that I forgot about or just didn't see. That was one thing going through this whole thing and trying to find these results. I will say there's a lot of race series that leave some room to be desired as far as being able to find results. It was a chore to go find all these results that I did. And there's a lot of them too that there is no social media presence at a lot of them. Like no results posted on social media. So then you go to their website and you got to dig through the website and then it's 21 results and you got to find 22 results. And so if you're running a series, put that stuff on social media. That's what everyone looks at these days. There's a lot of races that happen that you don't even see the results until Tuesday or Wednesday. So unless you were there and saw the actual result sheet, you have no idea what happened. So with that being said, let me see if we can get Craig back on the phone here. But yeah, so going through it, and like I said, I'm sure there is some that I missed. These ones, if I wasn't intently looking for them, I don't think I would have found some of them as well. So racing is alive and well. There's a lot of people that are out there racing, putting on races. There's tons of options, and I think we're at a good point in the series, or in the sport rather, to have all of these options and to have all these ways to go racing. But with that being said, this coming weekend there is a national enduro. It's the Dragons back in Virginia. Then next weekend we will be in Indiana for the Hoosier GNCC. Hope to see you guys out at the races. Big thanks to Beta. Big thanks to Zach Tussle with Raymond James Financial. And also our buddies over at Armored Graphics. You can check them out to get your graphic kits made, armoredgraphics.com, or at the socials at Armored Graphics. They also do screen printing as well. So big thanks to everyone that makes this happen. Big thanks to you for listening. I appreciate it. Big thanks to our buddy Craig Oberholzer, who my call wasn't going back through to him. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to be a friend, tell a friend. If you like these shows, let them know what they are missing by not listening to On the Pipe podcast. And hopefully we will literally see you next week on the YouTube live. Got some camera stuff coming in, getting it all dialed in. Trying to do some test runs. It's not at a point to go live on the YouTube that I want it to be at, so I want to make sure we get that polished before we go live. But that is still the future. That is the way that we are trending, and we hope to see you then. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Pro TP Tuesday.